Hi everyone, this is OCD Live. I'm Ali Grayman. We're going to be answering some questions about OCD. If you haven't subscribed to this channel, please subscribe and let's get to some questions. Okay, so the first question I have is, do intrusive thoughts have to be what if? I have ROCD and I get thoughts like, what if you don't love him? And it's upsetting and causes my brain to think, what if it's true, and so on. So here but it is a what if question because it's what if I don't love him, or I don't love him, I have to figure it out, So there's always a conflict here. So since there's a conflict, meaning you're not sure, right? It's a what if, it's still a what if question. Because with OCD is a disorder of doubt. So if you're having a doubt, then it immediately is labeled as OCD. Okay, because it's your theme. If you're having the same thought over and over and over again, and it's creating doubt and it's giving you a lot of anxiety, those are all the markings that this is an OCD thought. And you can kind of tell. I mean, when something feels real, you're never going to doubt it as possibly being OCD. So even the fact that you're writing this question already tells us that this is OCD. So the next question I have is, hi Ali, my problem is that whenever I get an OCD thought and I try to disregard it, my mind tells me that the earlier you solve the thought or the problem, the better the result will be, which is obvious if whatever the problem is actually real. I think my mind tells me this because if the thought becomes true, I will definitely be regretting it in the future, telling myself, oh, I should have taken the thought seriously, why did I even disregard it, and so on. For example, like if someone has a disease, it's always better to take the action as soon as possible rather than later when the disease becomes bigger. As an OCD sufferer, it's quite hard to determine if it's OCD or not, since the logic is somewhere away. For this kind of situation, can you give me a good tip? It's so hard for me to tell myself this is OCD, I choose to move on. When the thought becomes true, then I'll deal with it. If I think this way, I get immediately feared of the thought becoming true. Thank you. Well, okay, so I think what you are stuck on is if you say this to yourself, like, I have to move on, this is OCD, if the thought comes true, I'll deal with it, right? Then you get scared and you don't want to feel scared. So what you are doing is you're running away from the anxiety. However, the way the brain works is it's programmed right now to believe that anytime you get a feared thought, that means that it's real and it needs to be taken care of. And every time you take care of it, that kind of that shows the brain that it was right to send you that thought, and that thought was really something to fear. So by doing this, what you are doing is you're actually making your OCD worse and prolonging the situation and increasing your level of OCD. So the more you try to solve these thoughts, especially if you do it right away, right, the more your brain thinks that these thoughts are valid, you know? So, but what's stopping you here is when you're saying, like, if I choose to move on and all of this, I'm going to have a lot of anxiety. And there is no way around it. You will have a lot of anxiety, but it won't last for that long. So say, for example, you get this thought and then, you feel like you need to deal with it, but you choose not to. And you get all of these what ifs, like, what if I don't deal with it? What if it's come true and I should have dealt with it right away and all of this? Getting past it and still saying, you know what, this is classic OCD. There's nothing here that's abnormal in any way, but the way you're going right now, you're gonna have OCD indefinitely, so it's either continue to do it like this and just go from thought to thought to thought, or deal with the anxiety and recover. But the anxiety will be there as you are recovering because your brain is conditioned right now to give you anxiety if you don't react. And the only way to change that conditioning is to go through the anxiety and still not react. Because what will happen is you go through anxiety, you still don't react, nothing happens, your brain sees that nothing happens, it lowers the importance of the thought. Right? Then it sends you the thought again with lower importance. You again feel the anxiety, again not react, and again it lowers the importance of the thought. And it continues to do that until the thought is not important at all to the mind and it lets it go. So it's, unfortunately, there's no way to avoid anxiety. And I think that this is a problem where a lot of people get stuck with OCD, is chasing that feeling of well, I just want to feel good right now, you know? And unfortunately, by feeling good right now, like solving the thought and figuring it out and getting like reassurance or whatever, you're actually creating a situation for the long term that's going to give you more anxiety. So by choosing to disregard, you're actually making an investment into your future in terms of um, getting better, you know, because that's when the recovery work starts. When you're feeling the anxiety and you're refusing to do it anyway, that's recovery work. What you're doing right now is reassurance and making yourself worse. So it's hard. It's hard work. There's nothing I can tell you, you know, to really make it easier, but you just have to do this to recover, you know? So the next question I have is, hi Ali, I have a habit of keeping my toes up during the entire day and give me a lot of comfort to deal with all situation. Is this a compulsion? You know what? The way you can tell if this is a compulsion or not is by trying not to do it. So, whenever you have something that you do all the time, it would be therapeutic to say, you know what? Today I'm just going to get away from that routine. So you don't become stuck in it. And then see how you feel. If you're getting a lot of anxiety and you feel like now you have to do that, then it is a compulsion. If you can, you know, take it or leave it, but it does make you more comfortable when you do it, then I think it's okay. So it just depends. If you're getting a lot of anxiety because of this, which would be kind of silly, right? To get anxiety over something like this. That means it's OCD because there's no logic to it, right? But if it's not, then you know, I don't see a problem with you doing that. You want to always make sure that you're doing things because you want to do them, not because what OCD dictates to you. So if you're doing it because of OCD, then you can't continue to do that because then it's just going to continue to grow and get worse. But if it's just a habit, then I think that that's fine. So next question I have is, hi Ali, I'm having more moments of where I get the thoughts that used to scare me and I laugh because I think it's ridiculous. But there are some that scare me still. Is this good? Yes, it is good because that means that your brain is starting to get out of that zone of, you know, fearing every single thought. So some of them are falling away and some have not fallen away yet. So you're on the right track. Just keep going. I don't see anything, you know, negative here. I think that this is you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And really the thoughts that do still scare you, try to disregard them as quickly as possible, even though you'll feel anxiety, right? So you'll feel anxiety, but still choosing to disregard, even though you can't quite laugh at them yet. But by showing your brain that you're not playing the game anymore, you're gonna recover much faster. And that's the goal. Is why would you let yourself suffer more? Um, and recover a lot slower when you can do the same thing in half the time by just being more vigorous and vigilant in terms of your recovery. So the next question I have is, I have noticed that it's like OCD fills me with so much fear, and I say to myself that I will do this reassurance just once, so I will have peace. And then it's like OCD condemns me for doing reassurance. Sometimes after I do one reassurance, that I binge on reassurances and then feel really bad and discouraged, and like I am a crazy person, and then I want to confess to my husband or someone that I'm crazy, and I have been doing this. However, I have almost stopped confessing and have been resisting a lot of reassuring, but I am still tested. It's like OCD tempts me and then condemns me. Yeah, it's once you get into the pattern of seeking reassurance, if you seek reassurance once, your brain's like, oh, this person is seeking reassurance. It means the situation is important. Let's get more thoughts on this subject. And then the thoughts just start coming and coming and coming, and the person who was just seeking reassurance will kind of continue to be in that pattern. So this is entirely normal for OCD, but it's not good, you know, because this means that you're falling into it. So I like that how you say towards the end of the question that you are resisting reassuring and resisting confessing. That's great, and you have to do more of that. And if you did seek reassurance one time in the day, really saying, okay, I've already done it once, I'm not going to do it again, I'm not going to do it two or three times, and you know, or on different topics or the same topic or whatever, right? So you are acknowledging that you did reassurance, and now you're acknowledging that now you're done, you're not doing anymore, you know. So that way you are still putting yourself in control and in that power seat, because you know how I always talk on the show that you have to show your mind that you are in control and not OCD. So coming from a position of power, not from a position of fear. So if you came from a position of fear for an hour or a few hours in the day, pulling it yourself together and saying, okay, no more. Now I'm back in control. I'm not dealing with this anymore. I've refused to play the game any further, and getting out of it. But once you start seeking reassurance, it's so much harder to get out of it. So it's better just not to start, just refuse the first one, because it will get worse, the more you do different things. So next question I have is, hi Ali, is it possible to attract the false memory fears because we focused on them so much? By law of focus, attract the false memory fears. And again, first of all, this is like clearly reassurance question. And second of all, the more you focus on this kind of stuff, that, well, maybe I'm attracting it because I'm thinking about it and all of this, the more real it will feel to you. There's no evidence of that ever happening. And I don't want to give you reassurance, because reassurance will just breed more reassurance. You know what I mean? You'll feel like you need to get another reassurance and another and another, and it doesn't stop. So what you have to do is, every time you get this thought of, well, I'm getting these false memories, what if I'm attracting it? Disregarding it. This is an OCD thought. This is your OCD theme. You're not giving this the time of day. You're not giving this any energy, or trying to solve it. Well, am I attracting it? Am I not? Let me read up on this online. Let me try to figure it out. All of these are very bad behaviors that will lead to more OCD. So anytime you get a thought on this topic of, am I attracting something, or just like, I'm assuming you have false memory OCD, right? Any kind of false memory where you feel like, what if something happened? What if it didn't? All of this is immediately labeled as OCD, and you're leaving it there. You're moving on, even though you will feel anxiety, right? Because that's what we talked about in some of the first questions on the show, right? That you will have anxiety, but you still have to move on, and then the anxiety will subside after a little while, but don't try to solve the thoughts, figure things out, because it will just get, at best, it will get replaced with another thought. At worst, you will just keep going the same thought over and over again, finding new details, you know? So you will never solve it to an extent that you need to. Even if you do, just because of the nature of the thought, some are easier to solve just because of the um, kind of the way the situation is. Some of them are easier, that it'll just get replaced with another thought of equal anxiety. So you'll just go from one to another. So there's no point. Leave it there. If it has to do with false memory, or what if you're bringing on something because of false memory, it's OCD, move on. So next question I have is, hi Ali, can you tell me how to move on from religious OCD dilemma and questions? Because these dilemmas and questions which are stuck in my mind seem so real and logical, and it's hard for me not to avoid something. If the dilemma is whether something is sinful or not, or for seeking reassurance. Thank you. And this is the thing, is with any kind of OCD, including religious OCD, it grows in number of compulsions and avoidances. So say if you feel like with religious OCD, very common things are like, praying the wrong way. So you feel like you have to pray only a certain way, or you have to say things a certain way, or you can't wear this particular color, or use these particular numbers, or like any combination of that. But the more you do this, the more you will feel to do more of it. So say, for example, you start to avoid color or whatever, red, right? Then you're like, okay, red is not enough. I have to avoid black too. Okay, red and black are not enough. And now I can't wear certain type of clothes or whatever. Then, okay, now I can't wear certain type of clothes, and then now I can't have a certain type of number. So it grows in its complexity. The rituals grow, and to undo them, the ritual to undo them grows as well a lot of the time. So it's the same thing that I answered in the first question. You have two choices here. You can go around and around for pretty much indefinite amount of time and develop more of these compulsions as you're going, and try to undo the anxiety every time because it scares you. Or you can go through it, have the anxiety, but recover in the long run, because you are saying to your mind that this anxiety is irrelevant. And it will be scary, and you will have high anxiety, but that's how you recover. And I've had, like, you guys know, I've had so many people in my recovery program. Like, I have about 80% success rate in my recovery program, because when you do the work, you recover. It's a very kind of simple mechanism when it comes to OCD. It seems complicated because the thoughts are all different, but it's really simple how OCD works, in terms of sending you the thought versus not sending you, you know? So if you choose to go from thought to thought to thought, you can do it endlessly, right? If you choose to disregard, feel the anxiety, but then the anxiety will start to lessen over time, then you will start to actually be on the road to recovery. Because until you go through the anxiety without reacting, that's recovery, right? So until you do that, you're not recovering, you're making yourself worse, and nobody can do this journey for you except you. So you have to be ready for it, and you have to just take that leap of faith and just go for it, and you will see that after a while of doing it, you will see that all of these things were very silly and not important. But when you are in it, everything feels extremely serious and like you are doing something wrong, and all of this, like you're going against religion or against God. But it's getting past it and saying, you know what? God knows what it is. I'm not putting up with all of this OCD stuff. Because really, if you kind of want to get into the whole religion, OCD more specifically, with religious OCD, no matter what kind of religion you are, God already knows what's in your heart, right? Um, the reason why you're doing the rituals is not really for God. You're doing rituals to ease your anxiety and to get away from the OCD thoughts. So, what you are doing has less to do with the actual religion and more to do with OCD. Well, it is OCD, but I'm just saying, like, you're doing it for OCD, because you feel like if I don't do it, then I'm gonna, and all of this stuff. And it does go back to, worrying about religion and stuff like that. But the thought itself is OCD and the pull is OCD, you know? So it's refusing to do this any longer because it doesn't make sense, But it will feel like you're gonna have high anxiety for a while, So you have to take that step. There's no way really around that. So another question I got is about doing reassurance without even kind of realizing it, almost doing it on autopilot. And if you kind of catch yourself doing reassurance without realizing you're doing it, that's fine. I mean, it already happened right at this point in terms of like when you caught yourself, you've already done the reassurance. But from when you catch yourself, now you are in control. So now you can't allow yourself to do anymore. And it's like you trained your brain so much to seek reassurance. Now you have to untrain it. And so when you're conscious of it, then you're refusing, and that untrains the brain and trains it to not seek reassurance. So it's just a process. You just, every time you get a chance to refuse reassurance or avoidance, then you should do it, and then it will normalize everything else. So the next question I have is, I try to work out whenever I get time. I have observed when I'm working out, doing a cardio where my heart rate is going up, I feel as if a cap on OCD thought fountain is about to or has unleashed. I can see all kinds of associations, visuals, doubts, anxious thoughts rushing through my brain. And though I try to ignore it and focus, I still get worn out sensation in form of headache after a workout. It fades away once the heart rate settles. What could be causing this, and how do you deal with this? Well, I think when your heart rate goes up, because your brain doesn't really know, say for example, if you're doing cardio and you're running, right? Or you're speed walking, your brain really doesn't know what you're running away from. It sees you are being in a situation of running, and kind of like almost like running away. And I think it starts to equate that, and especially when your heart rate goes up, right? It starts to equate with that with danger, and it also equates OCD with danger. And I think somewhere those wires are getting crossed, where your mind thinks that one has to do with another, so it starts to bring up more OCD thoughts. I think though it is a good idea to view it as exposure, so don't avoid working out because of this. Instead, when you go into a workout, say, okay, I know I'm going to get thoughts, I'm going to disregard them. This is so you're doing two workouts at once. You're doing a physical workout, and you're doing a brain exposure exercise, which is a mental workout. And looking at it like that, I think it's not a bad thing, as long as you're not reacting. So really focusing, because with exposure and response prevention, which is what this is, right? The exposure most of the time is not the problem, but the response is always the problem. So exposure, I mean, some people are, afraid to expose themselves and they avoid, right? But even if you do get exposure, right? How do you respond? If you respond with fear every time you get exposure, you're really making yourself worse every time, you know? So using each time you get a thought as a chance to disregard, and the more you bring it on yourself, like consciously saying, okay, I'm going to work out, I'm going to do it on purpose, the more you're showing your brain that you are the one in control, you are the one in the power seat, and the faster you will recover from OCD because it's a much stronger position to be in. So the next question I have is, hi Ali, can you please share information about what causes OCD? It's medically an illness I accept, and there are medications available in which category SSRIs are presently widely used. What I have failed to understand about the medication is that there's a kind of deficiency of serotonin OCD sufferers have, which is causing it. If so, why doctors never confirm the so-called chemical imbalance through some sort of medical tests? Do we even have such tests? Instead of just saying all kind of permutations and combinations of meds. I just don't understand the logic of doctors saying, oh, you have OCD, oh, we'll put you on SSRIs. How do I believe the treatment rationally without any proofs, just based on assumption? Okay, so here I'm not a doctor, as you guys know, but I'm gonna give my opinion based on the amount of information I have about OCD, based on the, really big amount of experience that I have talking to people with OCD, because this is pretty much my full-time job now, and just having OCD myself and recovering myself as well, and having interaction with doctors as well. So I think based on what I see, most people, if not all people who have OCD, are very sensitive people to begin with. They're born that way. So everything kind of triggers them more than a person who would never get OCD. They're sensitive people, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because being sensitive generally is good. It's just not good in terms of getting OCD. Now, I would not say that just because you are born sensitive, you're automatically going to get OCD. Some people do, some people don't, right? I have a lot of people in my family who are sensitive, but they don't have OCD, right? So it's not a guarantee that one will create another, but it does put you in more of that danger group, basically. Now, in terms of in terms of serotonin, let's get with that first, okay? When you are more sensitive, generally, because your brain is upping and lowering your serotonin, and as well as other hormones, other chemicals, based on the fact that you are responding a certain way. So if you yourself being more sensitive, choosing to respond with fear to a thought, or choosing to really kind of get in depth about a thought. Well, now I'm not even talking about necessarily OCD, right? Just being a sensitive person. Your serotonin is going to be lower generally because you're a more anxious person generally. So you're kind of always in that state of like, oh my God, what if something goes wrong, right? Now, OCD feeds into that. And if you get really focused on a specific thought and get caught up in OCD, I'm not really sure why people get specifically OCD thoughts, where thoughts that are, false, right? Like false memories, or unrealistic fears or stuff like that, right? But generally, OCD is an anxiety disorder, right? So when you have anxiety, naturally your brain will lower these chemicals. What SSRIs do is they pull the serotonin in the brain. So the brain feels like you are in the state of emergency, like you're in the state of anxiety. It lowers serotonin, it ups cortisol, and so on and so forth, okay? Like stress hormones. Okay, so when that happens and your doctor gives you SSRIs, the SSRIs are counteracting that effect by pooling the serotonin that you have in the brain. So as serotonin gets made every day, instead of draining, like say for example, if it, like, think of it like a bath, like a tub, right? Instead of draining that tub, some remains in the brain, and then more gets added up to it. Do you know what I mean? So the amount of serotonin grows. And that's why SSRIs takes a few weeks to kind of, get to that level, because you're slowly kind of decreasing the amount of serotonin that's leaving the brain, which means that more of serotonin stays. But it's a fake reaction. It's not a natural thing. So as soon as you get off the medication, you're right back where you started. And this is why I always talk so critical about the medication, is because it works on, it's like a stopper of the drain. You know what I mean? Like the serotonin drains, this kind of stops it. But as soon as you remove the medication, you're going to be right back where you started if you haven't done the work. So that's why it's very important to do the work. And if you do the work, then you won't need the medication. So, but as you are recovering, if you go on medication for a little while, it's not going to make a difference. It's not a make or break, as long as you do the work as the primary and medication as the secondary. So last question I have is, I understand that you have to change things with your daily life to help you fully recover. Once you have fully recovered, can you go back to doing what you normally did before you had OCD? And, it depends what you mean to change the way you normally live your life. Because really what we're doing with OCD is we're saying, I am doing what I want to do. I'm not doing what OCD tells me to do. So I think you can really start to live your life as you normally would live it, without avoidance, without reassurance, without doing anything extra. And you are going to get anxiety at first, but just going through that anxiety and not allowing yourself to buy into it, to give into it, to change your routine at all because of OCD. But at the same time, the only kind of thing that you will change about your daily routine is you're very much more focused about where your thoughts are. So all the time, are my thoughts on OCD? If they are, switch them. If they're not, good. Continue to go on with your day. And even if they are on OCD, you're still continuing to go on with your day, but you are consciously doing that and consciously refusing these thoughts. So being aware of where your mind is at each and every moment of the day, which is kind of a lot of work, but it is worth it in terms of recovery. And if you do this, you will recover. Because the person asked also another question is, I'm terrified that I will not recover and I will have OCD for the rest of my life. Any advice? And if you do this, I promise you, you will recover. These thoughts have no power if you don't give them power. So for as long as you give them power, they will be there. For as soon as you start to refuse that power, they will start to fade away, and eventually they'll fade away altogether. And it actually doesn't take that long. In most cases, it takes, I would say, between 4 to 6 months. The recovery will only happen if you do the work. Even if it's not consistent, nobody's recovery was consistent all the way through. It's going to be ups and downs. Some days are going to be better, some days are going to be worse. But if you are doing as much as you can each day and focusing on the recovery and focusing on refusing the thoughts, I can guarantee you that you will recover. Because everybody recovers when they do this. It's when they don't do it that they don't recover, you know? So I really, guys, hope this helps. If you have any questions, please let me know. You can always reach me at info@youhaveocd.com. Please visit youhaveocd.com to find out about the recovery program. That's one-on-one talking with me. There's also ebooks, there's articles, there's all kinds of information to help you recover. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next show.